Welcome to another History Mystery. I'm Mimi, and with all the love in the air this time of year, I thought now would be a good time to talk about love in Thomasville. I don't mean any gushy community love or loving our neighbors, that's for other folks to discuss. I'm talking about love with a capital L, like Love Street, a neighborhood just a few blocks away from the museum. How did this street get its name? Were the people in charge of street naming just feeling sentimental, or is there more to the story? Let's find out. Look at a map of Thomasville and you will see that Love Street runs about 4 blocks in town, from Washington Street to Remington Street. It's a residential street lined with dozens of vernacular Victorian houses of all different shapes, colors, and sizes. But what's love got to do with it? To answer that question, we have to get to know the neighborhood. Looking back through our collections of maps, I was able to find where another researcher outlined the various city limits of Thomasville over the centuries. In 1857, the city limits expanded to cover the area we now call Love Street. This was huge growth for Thomasville, as the former city limits had not included this area or a nearby town known as Fletcherville. So why were they just adding this land to the city limits? Sure, you have to start somewhere, but from the looks of the street today, there doesn't seem to be much reason for why it wasn't part of the original city limits. But then I found a clue. Leb Deagle, an overall man about town, made his own map of Thomasville in this time period. It barely covers the area that would become Love Street. In fact, that space is covered by a big blue trapezoid. But if you look very carefully and fiddle with the settings on your computer, you can see that the blue space says Tan Yard. The area that now makes up Love Street was once a tanning yard. Tanning yards are where tanners, or people who turn animal hides into leather, work. It's a smelly business, as you might imagine, so tanning yards were often on the outskirts of towns, just close enough to get to your business, but not close enough to make people complain about the smell. So the tanning yard must have moved at least by 1857, and the land opened up for citizens to build a residential community. So now we know how the street was added to the city limits. But what does the name Love have to do with leather? Let's look into the houses that now decorate this street. Take a walk down Love Street, and you'll notice all those pretty houses I mentioned earlier. One of those houses is the P.E. Love house. So we found our connection. But who is P.E. Love? And what did he do that was so special he had a street named after him? Peter Early Love was born in 1818 in the town of Dublin, Georgia. That's about 3 hours northeast of Thomasville. His parents died when Peter was still a young boy, so his older sister and her husband took him in and raised him. When Peter was old enough, he attended Franklin College, what we now call the University of Georgia. After graduating, he went up north to study medicine at the University of Pennsylvania, the place for Southern students to learn medicine in America. But only for a year. He quickly realized his heart wasn't in medicine and decided to take up law instead. In 1839, Peter returned to Middle Georgia and began his study of law along with several future Thomasville lawyers. The young lawyers of Middle Georgia descended upon the still fairly new town and set up shop while also taking on other law-related responsibilities for the region. In Pete's case, he rose up through the ranks to become a delegate in the Electoral College for the presidential election of 1840. He helped elect William Henry Harrison, our 9th president, who only served 1 month in office before dying of pneumonia. A few years later, Pete was made Solicitor General of the Southern Circuit, meaning he rode all over southwest Georgia trying cases for the state. This also meant he spent a lot of time away from home, but that didn't stop him from making a home in Thomasville. Back on the farm, Peter was setting up a proper home for his wife and 4 children. He bought a large tract of land in what we now call the Love-Tockwotton neighborhood, and probably very cheaply considering it had once been the tanning yard. Peter began dividing up the property and selling it to his many friends, including the Hansel family and the Remington family. He kept just enough for himself and built a home around the year 1850. Today that house is known as the P.E. Love house, but to many back then it was the Love Mansion. His house was ready just in time for Peter to leave Thomasville to act as a Georgia senator in Milledgeville, Georgia. Peter may seem like a very busy man, but he was just getting started. After his term as a senator, he was made judge of the Southern Circuit, replacing his good friend A.H. Hansel. On top of that, Peter started his own newspaper, the Wiregrass Reporter, became captain of the Thomasville Guards, a local militia group, and helped lead the formation of Young's Female College, a long-running school for women here in Thomasville. When he grew restless for the next adventure, Peter took his biggest leap yet and became a member of the House of Representatives up in Washington, D.C. This was a short-lived trip. Peter was elected just before the Civil War broke out. He was pro-secession, so when Georgia and many other southern states left the Union, Peter and his fellow Southern congressmen packed their bags and left Washington. He returned home to Thomasville, but not quietly. Despite being middle-aged in a time where life expectancy was so short, Peter wasn't ready to slow down just yet. Peter returned to his position as captain of the Thomasville Guards. In the years before the war, the Guards mainly spent time doing drills and participating in parades and social events. Despite being a militia, the Guards were more of a social club for the young men of Thomasville. Even Peter admitted that the light infantry was a company of boys, as brave, as enthusiastic as any, but still, most of them are boys. They would ostracize me if only they knew that I had doubted for a moment their perfect equality with all other companies. Despite his feelings, the Guards were sent to fight in the Civil War, this time without Peter as their captain. Peter stayed behind to serve in the Georgia State Legislature, now one of 11 states making up the Confederate States of America. Not long after, he was made mayor of Thomasville. The end of the Civil War brought Union troops to Thomasville as part of President Andrew Johnson's plans for Reconstruction. Ever true to his personal beliefs and staunch support of leaving the Union, Peter resigned from his posts. Having burned the candle at both ends all his life, Peter died on November 8, 1866, at the age of 48. He was buried in his family's plot at the city cemetery, only a few blocks away from the courthouse he spent so much time in. As for the street, it probably earned its name sometime around the 1870s. Street names don't show up in census records until 1880, but we do have a story in the newspaper that tells us about Love Street as early as 1875. That was one of the first years the town of Thomasville held Independence Day celebrations following the Civil War. The Thomasville Guards marched from Broad Street down to the Love Mansion on Love Street, where people gave speeches and read the Declaration of Independence. Later news articles point to the area being named Love Street, such as this rant about the dangers of wandering cows. While not much has changed along Love Street in the last 100 years, at least we no longer have to worry about tripping over your neighbor's cow at night. So there you have it. Love Street was named after Peter E. Love, a man who spent his life working for Georgia and building his community. If this video interested you, be sure to check out our website and social media, where you can find more pictures like these, and be sure to leave us a like on this video. What topic would you like to see on an episode of History Mystery? Let us know in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching!